Tonight, Donald Trump's dramatic escalation in Los Angeles and the backlash over a rare military measure. Marines and troops on the move.
I think that it's ridiculous because where was the National Guard on January 6th?
The clashes over an immigration crackdown and why the U.S. president is now openly endorsing a threat to arrest California's governor.
I think it's great.
Canada's accelerated military timeline.
Our expectation for what we need to do to protect Canada have shifted.
Just as NATO changes the spending target. An urgent new warning about measles from Ontario's top doctor. Plus, how much time a woman is getting for faking pregnancies and why she did it. And remembering the front man behind a genre-defining group. How Sly Stone brilliantly blended musical styles and inspired generations.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina.
Good evening. One of the largest cities in North America is on edge tonight after Donald Trump approved the deployment of 700 U.S. Marines and 4,000 National Guard troops to respond to immigration protests after raids at workplaces. This is what it looks like on the streets of Los Angeles tonight. Law enforcement firing stun grenades and rubber bullets as they push demonstrators back. Also tonight, California has filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration, insisting the deployment is unconstitutional. The president's border czar calling it necessary. CTV's Washington Bureau Chief Joy Malbin on the clashes.
This is the showdown the U.S. president wants. Donald Trump defending his decision to deploy the National Guard after a weekend of chaos in L.A. The Pentagon now activating 700 Marines after days of clashes. Downtown declared an unlawful assembly area. Police fired tear gas and rubber bullets to disperse the crowds. A reporter caught in the crossfire.
You okay?
Some officers were pelted with projectiles and Molotov cocktails. Cars and trash bins set on fire.
People that are causing the problem are professional agitators, they're insurrectionists, they're bad people, they should be in jail. Thank you.
The protests were sparked by the government's immigration raids, part of the president's crackdowns on undocumented migrants, family members speaking for the first time.
I'm here today on behalf of my father and the dozens of families who were kidnapped by ICE.
Donald Trump, in an extraordinary move, deployed the National Guard against the wishes of California's governor.
Where was the National Guard on January 6th?
Governor Gavin Newsom blames the president for inflaming tensions.
Where's your decency, Mr. President? Stop. Rescind this order. It's illegal and unconstitutional.
California now suing the Trump administration for overstepping its authority. The governor even daring them to arrest him.
Arrest me. Let's just get it over with. Tough guy. You know, I don't give a damn, but I care about my community.
Trump shot back. He'd be happy to.
I would do it if I were Tom. I think it's great. Gavin likes the publicity, but I think it would be a great thing. He's done a terrible job.
Homeland Security says immigration raids will continue. The president insisting if it weren't for him calling in the military, L.A. would be obliterated. Omar?
All right, Joy, thank you. Prime Minister Mark Carney moved Canada's military away from its long-standing ally today and towards an ambitious new timeline to hit NATO's defense spending target. But that goalpost is changing. CTV's Mike LeCouture on the schedule and the price tag.
Canada will achieve NATO's 2% of GDP target this year.
An ambitious announcement, considering during the election campaign, the Liberals promised to hit that mark in 5 years.
The nature of our alliance is changing, the expectations within those alliances, but also our expectation for what we need to do to protect Canada have shifted.
That, as Carney says, the U.S. is pulling back on collective security, and President Donald Trump is demanding allies do more. Now, NATO is too. Today, Secretary General Mark Rutte called for a 400% increase in air and missile defense and a new spending target.
I expect allied leaders will agree to spend 5% of GDP on defense.
Government numbers show Canada is spending 1.45% of GDP on defense. In the 2025-26 fiscal year, that figure was expected to be 1.71%. Adding $9 billion to the budget should hit the 2% target.
We will support an additional money for our military. That's why we're calling on the government to bring in a budget.
Now, there are no big-ticket items like fighter jets in the plan announced today, but the money will be used to increase salaries for the armed forces, improve recruitment, and other day-to-day needs.
It's funding for spare parts, maintenance, fuel, all of what we need to operate our equipment.
Historically, spending money on the military has been an issue. However, the government has earmarked funds for a new procurement agency to get money out the door.
Canada spending 2% of GDP on defense is the Canadian government issue and not just something for the Department of National Defense and the Canadian Armed Forces to look after.
Carney says getting to the spending target did not involve any creative accounting, even though his office later confirmed the Canadian Coast Guard will soon be managed by the Department of National Defense. Omar?
All right, Mike, thank you. Word today that the number of evacuees from the wildfires in Manitoba is now 21,000, and the province has now asked people within its borders and other parts of Canada to avoid all non-essential travel. CTV's Alex Carpa on the devastation in the prairies and in Ontario, starting with the terrifying moments for construction workers trapped by the flames.
I'm scared.
A harrowing situation caught on video. Several construction workers encircled by a raging wildfire. The crew forced to huddle in a shipping container to protect themselves.
And there's going to be explosions, so be careful.
Fire and smoke surrounded the 18 crew members at their work site near Sandy Lake First Nation in northwestern Ontario.
That's where that crew were.
The shipping container, which housed the crew, left completely burnt from the flames. The wildfire, which trapped the construction crew on Saturday, continues to rage. Most of the crew is from Manitoba and were safely taken out of the site and have now been reunited with their families. 10 out of the 28 ongoing wildfires in the province remain out of control, forcing around 21,000 people to move south or out of province. The largest fire near Flin Flon and Sheridan is over 307,000 hectares in size, about 7 times the size of Winnipeg.
Watching for flare-ups all over the place, and it's still traveling in different directions around the community, so I'm not assuming that it's going to be an instant kind of a return.
The Manitoba government is urging tourists not to visit the province as the government continues to try and find shelter for evacuees.
There are thousands of evacuees currently displaced, and the provincial government, along with its partners, has been working quickly to find accommodations that fit their comfort, medical, and family needs.
But there is some positive news in the firefight, as much-needed rain fell in parts of the prairies, bringing some relief to northern Manitoba and Saskatchewan.
That, coupled with significant efforts from our firefighters and our frontline staff, we're resulting in progress and some positive developments.
As for Alberta, progress is being made, but wildfires are expected to grow in parts of that province this week, which could prompt even more evacuations. Alex Carpa, CTV News, Winnipeg.
In BC, where dozens of wildfires are burning out of control, there isn't much relief in sight.
Current conditions on top of the ongoing drought and the overwintering fires in the northeast corner of British Columbia is setting us up for an increase in wildfire activity over the next few weeks.
There are currently 10 evacuation orders affecting about 120 homes in the northeast of the province. A raging wildfire discovered on Vancouver Island yesterday has rapidly grown, consuming approximately 24 hectares. Ontario's top doctor issued an urgent warning to would-be parents today, citing half a dozen cases of infants who contracted measles, which could have been entirely prevented. CTV's Heather Butts explains.
The youngest and most vulnerable now at the center of Ontario's measles outbreak, with Ontario's top doctor confirming 6 infants were born with measles since last fall, contracted in the womb through unvaccinated mothers, infections that could have been prevented. About 40 pregnant women have been infected with measles in the province.
The mother can get really sick with measles while she's pregnant. She can end up in hospital and ICU. We've seen that. It's also really bad for the baby that the mother's carrying. Premature birth.
Women are urged to get the shot before becoming pregnant. They can't receive the MMR vaccine during pregnancy, but if exposed and seek medical attention immediately, doctors can help.
What we do is through blood donations, we pool people's antibodies, and that has the ability to provide you with passive immunity against measles.
Just last week, a premature baby infected with measles died in southwestern Ontario. The infant also faced other serious medical complications. A routine childhood vaccine, people born between 1970 and 1996 may have only received one dose and should check their records or speak to a healthcare professional to see if a booster is needed.
The second dose of the vaccine was only started to be administered in Canada in about 1996.
Signage lines the entrance to public buildings in rural southwestern Ontario, where the outbreak is most prevalent and vaccination uptake is low.
So they're a little bit nervous about government. They're a little bit nervous about the healthcare system. Many of these communities do not have health insurance. They pay out of their own pocket. They have large families, so transportation becomes an issue.
Ontario health officials say they are trying to work with communities that have chosen not to get the shot, but vaccine hesitancy is complex. It often takes trust, communication, and relationships in healthcare, an added challenge when millions of Canadians don't have a family doctor. Heather Butts, CTV News, Toronto.
An Ontario woman has been sentenced to 3 years in prison for faking pregnancies. 26-year-old Caitlin Braun from Brantford, Ontario, pleaded guilty to using pregnancy care in the form of doula support under false pretense last year. She was already serving house arrest for similar crimes. 2 officers have been placed on administrative duty after a woman in Smiths Falls, Ontario was dragged out of a police cruiser and then pinned to the ground by an officer. She was in handcuffs at the time. Police say they intervened after she allegedly spat and kicked at them. Her family says they are horrified, saying she has a history of mental health and addiction issues. And disturbing video has emerged of a vicious swarming attack in Kitchener, Ontario. At least 10 high school students repeatedly punching and kicking a teenager on the ground during a fight while bystanders stood by and recorded it on their phones. One person eventually rushed in to rescue the victim. Closing arguments began at the sexual assault trial of 5 former World Junior hockey players today. CTV's Heather Wright was inside the courtroom in London.
A small group of protesters greeted the 5 hockey players as they arrived at a London, Ontario courthouse this morning. While across the street, a man held up a large sign saying false allegations. Inside the 14th floor courtroom, Michael McLeod's lawyer began his closing arguments by telling the judge the complainant, known only as EM, is not an honest or reliable witness. David Humphrey argued she was a fully consenting participant and that her accusations against McLeod, Alex Fermenton, Cal Foote, Dylan Dubé, and Carter Hart began as a white lie that spiraled out of control. Humphrey said EM changed her story to garner sympathy and to bolster the civil lawsuit she filed against Hockey Canada. She would rather be seen as a victim than face the repercussions of the choices she made, Humphrey told the court. This case dates back to June 2018 when EM met McLeod and other members of Canada's World Junior hockey team at a downtown London, Ontario bar. After consensual sex with McLeod, other members of the team were invited to the hotel room. The Crown argued in its case that the young woman only participated in sexual activity with the accused because she was drunk, on autopilot, and terrified about leaving. EM testified she was slapped and spat on. But defense attorneys argued today that the complainant changed her story, initially telling police she was too drunk to consent, later saying she was too terrified to consent. Court also heard from the lawyer representing Carter Hart, the only player to testify in his defense. Megan Savard told the judge her client should be acquitted and that his sexual encounter with the complainant was brief and consensual.
Closing arguments are expected to last several days. Defense attorneys are going first, followed by the Crown. After that, the case will be in the hands of the judge, and it is expected it could take several weeks, if not months, for her to render a verdict. Heather Wright, CTV News, London, Ontario.
A U.S. judge has tossed out a $400 million lawsuit brought on by actor Justin Baldoni against his one-time co-star Blake Lively and her husband Ryan Reynolds. Baldoni had filed a defamation and extortion suit against his It Ends With Us co-star after Lively alleged he sexually harassed her on set. Baldoni argued that after making those claims, the power couple had conducted an organized smear campaign to destroy him. Coming up. The world says goodbye to a funk rock pioneer. Greta Thunberg and other activists on a Gaza-bound aid boat were detained early this morning when Israeli forces enforced a long-standing blockade.
I urge all my friends, family and comrades to put pressure on the Swedish government to release me and the others as soon as possible.
Thunberg recorded that message before she was detained. The so-called Freedom Flotilla Coalition, which organized the voyage, says the activists were kidnapped by Israeli forces. However, Israel's foreign minister posted online that the, quote, selfie yacht of celebrities was taken to Israel, adding that the activists would return to their home countries and the aid would be sent to Gaza through what it called proper channels. Closer to home, getting around Montreal has just become harder because of a bus and subway strike, and it comes ahead of the city playing host to the Grand Prix. But as CTV's Quebec Bureau Chief Geneviève Beauchemin reports, the city is pulling out all the stops to make sure the F1 race and its fans keep moving.
Montreal is preparing for the roar of fast cars and facing the challenge of its Grand Prix coming off as a well-oiled machine. And so a transit strike paralyzing transport would be a major roadblock. The strike has partially shut down service, leading to long lineups, leaving some commuters stranded, confused and angry today.
I had to wait at school until the trains are back up because I live really far.
For me, somebody who can afford an Uber, somebody who can kind of have that access, it's easier, but I'm more concerned about other people.
The Labor Tribunal ruled essential services must be maintained, ensuring rush hour service, but also keeping transit on track Friday to Sunday for the Formula One race, when the city is set to welcome 350,000 visitors.
The metro will stay open, the buses, everything has been done in order to have a magnificent weekend.
Last year there was no strike, but mix-up between police, transit authorities and the city created transport chaos to the site. Pouring rain also led to floods in paddocks and hospitality suites at the Grand Prix circuit. Adding to the misery, the fire department abruptly shut down some terraces in downtown Montreal during the peak of Grand Prix festivities for bylaw violations.
It was a very humbling year for us. We do recognize some of the issues that arose last year.
Several countries, including Thailand, India, are in the race to host a Grand Prix, putting the Canadian event on the line. Officials say since last year they fast-tracked efforts to get the city in top shape. They recently banned new construction sites in the downtown core and removed 250 of Montreal's orange construction cones, reopening roads. Today there's a lot of traffic in the city, and with just a few hours of rush hour service, that has some people grumbling about fast cars getting priority over their commute. Geneviève Beauchemin, CTV News, Montreal.
Still ahead. What Canada's cruise industry has on the itinerary to attract tourists. The tourism industry and cruise ships in particular hit rough waters during the COVID-19 pandemic. But now that industry is looking to capitalize on people rethinking their travel plans to the U.S. CTV's Paul Hollingsworth now with just how much the cruise ship industry and East Coast ports stand to gain.
This waterfront walking tour features executives who are visiting for the Canada-New England Cruise Ship Symposium. It's a tourism think tank designed to grow the industry.
I'm hoping to just build some new relationships and hopefully partnerships in future seasons.
The tourist season is off to a red-hot start. Hotels in downtown Halifax are already sold out. Visitors like Jim Dixon are spending their tourism dollars in Canada for the foreseeable future.
I'm going to stay clear of the U.S. for a while till things settle down.
and things change.
Dennis Campbell says there is still room for tourism growth, and he sees cruise ships as the best way to achieve that, which makes the timing perfect for this symposium.
The nice thing about cruise passengers is, they come and bring their own beds. So, that helps all these restaurants and museums and small shops and so on. It's great because we don't have to build hotels to have these extra visitors.
Visitors who walk the waterfront and spend money while they're here.
It can get busy. It's extremely busy with the larger ships especially. We see a lot of foot traffic increase, and it really amps up our business as well.
That business could grow in the near future, especially if this symposium leads to an expansion of the overall cruise ship season.
We have lots of space in the spring and the summer.
Campbell says it's possible this symposium could provide an added boost to the tourism industry, which welcomed more than 350,000 cruise ship passengers to the port of Halifax last year alone. Paul Hollingsworth, CTV News, Halifax.
Still ahead. Farewell to the extraordinary maestro of funk. Fans are saying goodbye to a generational musical genius. Sly Stone transcended genres. Here's CTV's John Van Valley Rao.
In the late 1960s, for a time, there was no bigger band than Sly and the Family Stone. Known for their groundbreaking sound and flamboyant style of its lead singer, whose music inspired so many others.
You don't have Prince without Sly Stone. You don't have Public Enemy, D'Angelo, Kendrick Lamar without Sly and the Family Stone. I mean, he still continues to inspire generations of musicians.
Sly Stone, whose real name was Sylvester Stewart, started out as a California DJ in the early 1960s, but then formed a band with his brother and a sister that became one of the first major American rock groups to be racially integrated, and in 1968 had their first big hit. The band blended rock, funk, soul, and psychedelia, and were genre-defining, songs that often promoted themes of racial harmony.
Don't hate the black, don't hate the white. If you get bitten, just hate the bite.
But Stone struggled with addiction and began canceling shows, and in the mid-1970s, the band fell apart, reuniting in 1993 as they were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. In his memoir, Stone said all he wanted to be remembered for is the music. Which will most certainly endure. John Van Valley Rao, CTV News, Toronto.
It certainly will. And that's a snapshot of this Monday. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. Good night and see you tomorrow.